Millions of Canadians have their information compromised via a data breach at LifeLabs. I'm Marco Perri. Welcome to the Perri platform. I feel like we've been desensitized to the gravity of data breaches and cyber attacks. It happens so often, our info is constantly compromised that now it's just another day at the park. And unfortunately, that's the wrong approach that we should take if we want to handle this appropriately. So, yesterday, it came out that LifeLabs, Canada's largest health diagnostics provider, was the latest victim of a data breach, and even saying that feels so weird. So LifeLabs was the latest victim, eh? Really, the true victim were all of the patients who had their data compromised. LifeLabs could be considered the incompetent fool who enabled this to happen in the first place, and they created the collateral damage. I think some people are trying to frame it as if LifeLabs was completely taken by surprise and they are one of the victims here, so that we can relate to them and not cast blame harshly. Unfortunately, the facade does not work on me. But before we get to that, according to CTV, hackers have obtained personal data of 15 million LifeLabs customers. Let's do some quick math right now. Canada's population is roughly 37 million people. 15 million people is the equivalent of 40%. This is a massive data breach. It's almost incomprehensible to have 40% of your population being exposed from one cyber attack, but it happened. This is due to LifeLabs' size, first of all. They are a major diagnostic provider, and two, because they were not taking the proper steps to ensure that your data was protected. So, what exactly got compromised? Addresses, passwords, birthdays, health card numbers, and even lab results. Information about your very health is now floating around somewhere on the dark web, maybe. I don't think I have to point this out, but just to make the point a little bit more hard-hitting, these things are very personal aspects of people's lives. They are private, and they're intimate details, and the thing is that it varies depending on whose data we're talking about when it comes to how valuable it is, and that's one factor that motivates the hackers. If they start getting data about the health records of prominent figures, politicians, celebrities, and there's things in there that they don't want to come to light, that's a perfect opportunity for blackmail. And now, more relating to the average person, you might not care if someone finds out that you have diabetes, but your password, it's another story. There are a lot of people who use the same password for everything, for convenience sake. Now that you've been compromised, I highly suggest anyone who may be a victim of the LifeLab data breach to go and change the password. Hackers are fast with it. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an algorithm that tried out the passwords associated with your email on various different accounts and maybe even banking websites. Definitely check this out if you are a victim. Another thing that 40% of the Canadian population has to worry about now is identity theft. These hackers are very likely to try and sell your information online at places like the dark web to people who are trying to create false personas. You could very well have a loan taken out under your name because your information is widely available. This truly is the epitome of a national headache. LifeLabs should be administering test results for everyone whose blood pressure is going up as a result of this. Now, I also must admit that the company themselves, LifeLabs, they do stand to lose something too, and that is credibility. From their perspective, they might be freaking out because customers are going to be looking for alternatives now. Having a data breach of this magnitude and the fingers are pointing at you because of your negligent practices, it doesn't look good. At the very least, they care about their personal data. They don't want things like their address, their name, their health card number to be floating around like that, and having it exposed is a bad look for any company. This is all contingent to the degree to which we take it seriously though, and I feel like that's been on the decline. It's the same thing with all the Facebook scandals. When they happen so much, when there is an abundance of scandal and data breaches that affect you, you become to let it become normalized. You become desensitized to it. I'm definitely seeing that. This should be causing a national uproar. 40% of the population having their data leaked to a hacker? That's outrageous, but yet people will still pay more attention to something a little bit less serious like a meme that will get way more widespread sharing than something of this magnitude. And if we posit that people don't really care too much about this, well, LifeLabs really doesn't stand to lose that much in terms of that reputation. Maybe some portion really cares, but if the majority doesn't, then that pressure for them to change and implement proper procedures isn't there. And that's why I'm saying it really matters that we care about this, that we show companies that their business and their bottom line is in danger if they do not respect our privacy. To simply let it go tells them that they can get away with cost cutting, that they can skimp out on data protection because we don't have the initiative to hold them accountable. Now, back to the article. The news is coming out that LifeLabs led Ontario and the BC Privacy Commissioner know about the attack on November 1st. So although the news is coming out now, this entire saga has been in the works for quite some time. The hacker actually held the data hostage and they asked for a ransom. That's crazy. Supposedly too, LifeLabs paid them. This is the question I have to ask. Did they think that the hackers would hold up their end of the bargain? We don't really know, and they don't know either. I have to wonder if they simply just threw money at these hackers and doubled their payday, because now they get the ransom from stupid LifeLabs, and they will still continue to sell your data on the dark web. Who knows? These are not the most ethical actors that we're talking about too. There is no guarantee that they're going to hold up their bargain. Them telling you that they pinky promise isn't going to hold up. But still, maybe there wasn't much LifeLabs could do in that scenario. If LifeLabs did not at least try to regain our data by paying the ransom, I assume the public would not take too kindly to that, and it's possible the backlash could be multiple times more heavy. Now, at the end of the day, LifeLabs makes the claim that they cannot guarantee anything, and that is the most truthful representation of the matter. They can't guarantee that the hacker is going to stay true to their reward. It's very possible that they did want, in fact, the double payday, and they're going to sell the data anyways. And when asked about this, why they paid the ransom, the CEO of LifeLabs said this. Their desire was to try and get this data and keep it as secure as we could and not have it exposed. Here's a newsflash, it's already exposed, and paying the ransom did not guarantee any such security. What he's talking about should have been mended 1,000 steps in the past. This is not something you fix when the data is already leaked. You are negotiating with a phantom thief here, and if that is the position you find yourself in, it means you messed up long before. Security, data protection, anti-fraud measures, that happens at the inception of your data policy. Not once these guys are playing pirates and trying to hold you for ransom. Proper infrastructure and protection should have been in place from day one. Companies, left, right, and center, are being hacked, and I wonder how much of this is simply due to negligence. I'm sure there is some portion of that you would be hacked either way. There is some genius cyber hacker out on the loose who can get through any system, but do not tell me that every instance of this is from something like that. According to Norton, in the first half of 2019 alone, there was 3,800 publicly disclosed breaches. Over 4 billion records were exposed, and the number continues to grow compared to the previous year. In other words, the trend is going up. There are more breaches happening, and there's more data being leaked. Companies are not adapting to the change. Now, I won't pretend to understand the intricacies of cyber warfare, but there are people out there who do know. You have hackers and you also have those who work to stifle invasions. It's not like all of the intelligent brain power is going to the dark side here. There are capable people who know how to handle these things, but they are not being employed and they are not being put in the right position to handle the threat. Instead, they're being shafted, given low wages, and not being thought of as an immediate expense that is required. They are optional, and that's the wrong way to view it. Even to me, it seems painfully obvious that not encrypting passwords and keeping all of your information in central locations for thieves to easily collect is not good policy. I don't have a degree in computer science, I can tell you that. To have passwords saved as plain text with no protection is foolish, but you would be surprised by how many companies still do it. It is also clear to me that we are not holding companies accountable, and that is a big part of the problem. These are multi-million and sometimes multi-billion-dollar enterprises, and they have the means available to make a change. Babying them and acting like they are incapable of understanding the gravity of data protection is inappropriate. We cannot be readily making excuses for companies like this because it really is negligence. Not all of those 3,800 cases of early 2019 are due to the company simply not knowing enough. It's due to negligence, and they are not being held accountable to that standard. Presumably, we have to make a distinction here. Of course, of that 3,800, there probably are some companies who do everything in their power to take your data seriously, and mistakes happen. But this cannot be the case for every instance, and we have to learn how to differentiate between the two and administer the proper punishments to ensure the trend does not continue on into the future. If your company's data room gets breached due to lackluster procedures and cost savings, well, companies like that not wanting to spend money on enhanced protection and negligently leaving their customers vulnerable, there has to be a charge associated, and it can't just be any charge at the same time. This is one of the things about capitalism. The companies in it are predictable. We understand their intentions, and it lies in the bottom line. You have to make the cost of getting breached greater than the cost of proactively defending against it. If you do not provide the proper incentive, how do you expect the companies to adapt when we clearly know their motivation? You have to bring money into the equation, and the best way to do that from the government standpoint is by creating a threat of a fine that is so massive it hangs over their head at every level of decision making, and they will do what they have to do to avoid it falling on them. It's synonymous to corruption scandals. If a company is breaking the law, they are dumping oil into the river, and the fine for doing so is, say, $2 million. It doesn't matter what that number is. It matters how much money they've made and the ratio between the two. If they make $10 million for breaking the law, and you fine them $2 million, that is simply a cost of doing business, and there is a profit to be made. But if the cost for breaking the law is multiple what they be making, let's say it's $20 million and they only stand to gain 10, the companies will quickly change their tune because they stand to lose a lot. And I think even that's not enough. You have to make the consequences to the point of bankruptcy. The company needs the proper incentive or they will not play along. And we know what kind of tune they want to dance to as well in this system. It's just a matter of incompetence, not making sure the proper motivations are aligned. Now you might ask, what is LifeLabs doing for these customers who have been compromised? They have some compensation, but I think, once again, it's non-sufficient. Victims of data theft are being given 1 year of protection from things like the dark web, and you also get identity theft monitoring. That is terribly short, first of all, just 1 year. Who knows when your data might resurface and be used? I guarantee you it could be more than 1 year. It can be in the second year, the third year, who knows, but all they want to give you is 1 year for putting you in that position in the first place. Now, at the same time, some people already have this. Some people can't even take advantage of this protection because they've been compromised already this year and they've been offered the same terrible compensation package. Companies like Desjardins, Disney Plus, Capital One, Freedom Mobile, DoorDash, they've all been breached and offered similarly benign compensation. It's almost useless to people who've been affected before. So you're telling them, yeah, we messed up and compromised your data, and we're only going to offer you this compensation. If you already have it and it's useless to you, you get nothing further. That's it. We're sorry. We want you to pretend like this never happened. It doesn't make any sense. And I must point out too, that there is no case that these giants cannot ramp up their security. It's just a matter of them not being willing to spend the capital needed for the talent and the infrastructure. They need the incentive structure to be built up. Data is the gold of the future. It's been said so many times, and that is the truth. Ransoms are being paid over it. You can see that in this case. Corporations are making billions of dollars off data with Facebook. Lives are being destroyed over the consequences of mishandling it. Identity fraud. Someone pretending to be you because they have access to that information. It's our data, yet we have to pretend it's worthless and be satisfied with 1 year of monitoring when it gets leaked. That doesn't seem appropriate when we're talking about gold-like materials. Here's a thought experiment. Between Facebook having all of that information on us and these data leaks, just imagine just how much of our data is floating around out there on the web. I have a prediction that for most people, someone online can compile that for all the information that's floating around about you and create an autobiography that's probably better than what you could create yourself. Facebook knows all your interests, your likes, timelines of when you graduated, when you met your wife, when your birthday is, and all these other data leaks provide the underlying themes like your name, your address, your health card number, what kind of health conditions you have now because of LifeLabs, and you put that all together, I would not be surprised to find that we have complete profiles on us online. It's a matter of putting the pieces together, but those pieces are floating around willy-nilly. It's somewhat frightening, especially when you consider that somebody can collect the pieces and create basically a registry of everybody in a country based on that. The governments and the courts need to take data more serious and force companies to do the same. They won't do it themselves, the companies, without the proper motivation, and we can provide that. Slam them with lawsuits that put them on the verge of bankruptcy if negligence is established. And I don't mean that for companies who did their best, they have the proper security, but somehow Jimmy Neutron found a way to break in. I'm talking about companies like it seems LifeLab, who is storing their data with no regard and abandon for any type of security measures, and they're taking your data with no grain of seriousness. For a company like that, they have to be held to a high standard and basically be made an example of, because without that, companies will not adapt. Hackers are just finding new ways to game the system, and they're ramping up their production because the countermeasures are not sufficient thus far. It's so weird too when we know that the proper actions are there, they're just not being put into place. It really is a game of cost, and we have to shift that game into our favor before it's too late and everything about our lives is online. Maybe someone hacks into the Alexa database and your private conversations are also being posted to the cloud. That's in combination with Facebook's data on you, your medical history, your health card number, and everything else. We really don't live too far away from that sort of scenario. A sort of data apocalypse where there is no such thing as privacy anymore, and every little inch of you is now exposed to the public. We don't want that. So, that brings me to the end of today's conversation. If you enjoy the content, be sure to leave a review and share to help us grow. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Perri Platform. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.